is a Roll to Hit Gaming First Look. In this video, we begin our game showcase. The first look covers components, rules, and setup. It is designed to give you a quick introduction to a game you might have interest in. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Let's head into the game room for your Roll to Hit Gaming First Look host.
Welcome back. I'm Lucas from Roll to Hit Gaming, and today we'll take our first look at Cool Mini or Not sci-fi themed deck builder Xenoshyft Dreadmire. Can this measure up to the ever popular Xenoshyft Onslaught? Let's take a look. If you'd like to see an unboxing of the Kickstarter rewards, click the I in the upper right corner of your screen. Today, we'll focus on the retail version of the core box. Let's look at the components. Xenoshyft Dreadmire includes 88 Nortec troop cards, which are made up of 16 militia and 9 of each of the following: Rangers, Research Officers, Assault Commanders, Combat Snipers, Demolitionists, Prometheus Flamesuits, Tesla Arc Shield Exosuits, and Icarus Flight Suits. These cards make up the troops you will buy and seed onto your lane board to defend the base. Different troop types will be available depending on the wave of the game, but we'll cover that later. These troops will need gear to give them a chance against the coming waves of enemies, and to that end the core box contains 100 item cards, including weapons, armor, healing devices, bombs, and other gadgets. There are 5 each of 20 different items. Also included are the 20 item trackers that you can differentiate because of the red universal no symbol. These are used during setup to determine which items are available for that game. Players will use the valuable Xenosatham as currency to buy troops and items. This is represented by 84 cards in 3 different denominations. When gained, they'll be added to a player's deck and can be used when drawn. During the wrap-up phase, players can burn smaller denomination Xenosatham from their discard piles and replace them with larger denomination cards, making their decks more effective. During setup, items will be placed on the item dashboard situated in the center of the table next to the wave dashboard, where troops and Xenosatham are placed. Players assume one of 6 different roles, represented by these role cards. We'll go over roles as we set up for our sample turn. The base is represented by a single cardboard base dashboard. Players track damage and abilities with the included tokens, 30 of each color, and each player is given both a Nortec lane for their troops and a Brood lane for enemy waves. These enemy waves are known as the Brood. Xenoshyft Dreadmire comes with a reference card explaining the special rules for the Brood, including the use of the 16 included weather cards. Weather conditions do not have effects on their own, however many cards have special rules that are activated based on the current weather. The Brood itself is made up of 156 cards in 3 different waves, becoming more difficult with each wave. We couldn't possibly go through each of the enemies included in these decks, so let's look at a few so you get the idea. Now, let's set up the table for a 4-player game of Xenoshyft Dreadmire. Begin by placing the wave, item, and base dashboards in the center of the table. Place the weather deck to the side, and the blue and red ability tokens somewhere near the table so that all players can reach them. Give each player a red enemy board and a blue Nortec board. Then give each player their starting hand, comprised of 6 1-value Xenosatham cards and 4 militia troops. Next, assign a division to each player. In this 4-player example, we've drawn Weapons Research, Medbay, Command, and Armory. Each division card has special rules which will come into play during setup. They will also provide ongoing abilities for you as the player. Reference each of your division cards to determine how they'll affect your item setup. Usually, this will be generating a specific item stack and or adding 2 additional cards to that player's deck. So let's examine ours a little closer. The armory has us generate a random shield card stack of cost 3 or less, and then add 2 of those cards to that player's deck. Randomly generate this by shuffling your supply cards and drawing until you draw one that matches the listed criteria. For this game, we'll add the Ion Blaster armor to our item stack. The Weapon Research Division asks you to randomly add a weapon of cost 3 or less. For this game, we'll add Hades Fury Flamethrower. After item setup, the command player can take any 2 cards from the item area and add them to their deck. And the Medbay Division has you generate a medical card and add it to the deck. In this case, the HPS Vanguard Armor. Once you complete adding items to the item board based on division cards, then fill any remaining item spaces by randomly dealing that many cards from the supply stack onto those areas. These are the items that will be available as you begin playing. Now find the 5 item cards matching each of these supply cards and place them on top. We'll speed this up and jump ahead to save a little time. Now that you've populated all of your item stacks, make sure each player gets their starting cards as listed on their division cards. Next, take your remaining troops and seed them onto the wave board. Each troop lists in blue the wave to which they belong. We'll speed this up and save us a little time. Once all troops are in place, we'll place the Xenoshyft on their spaces. Now we'll prepare our encounter decks. Separate the brood into 3 stacks, waves 1, 2, and 3. Remove any boss cards, those with this symbol in the upper left-hand corner, and set them aside. Shuffle each encounter stack and place them near the game board. Using a blue ability token, mark the base's hit points, and that's equal to 15 times the number of players. In our 4-player game, the base begins with 60 hit points. Choose who will be the first player. In our example, that will be the Weapons Research player. You're now set up and ready to begin playing Xenoshyft Dreadmire. Let's take a look at how troop, enemy, and item cards work, and then we'll show you a sample of the first player's turn. Troop cards represent the various soldiers you'll use to defend the base. Each has their own unique abilities, weaknesses, and strengths. You'll notice in the upper right-hand corner the resource cost. This is the cost in Xenoshyft a player must play from their hand in order to purchase that troop and add them to their deck. In the lower right corner, you'll notice the troop's hit points. This is how many damage a troop can take before it's defeated. The power in the lower left corner is how much damage a troop deals when it attacks. Each troop has a wave listed, meaning that that troop cannot be purchased until you've reached at least that wave. And each troop has a special ability. Each ability will explain its specific use and effect. Now let's look at an enemy card. Enemy cards obviously don't have resource costs. However, sometimes in that space you may see a biohazard-like logo, and that indicates that's a boss creature. Bosses are typically far more dangerous than normal creatures of that wave. Monsters also have hit points, power, and their own unique abilities. In some cases, they'll gain additional abilities based on what the current weather is. Item cards represent the various weapons and equipments that you can make use of to defend the base and protect your troops. Each item card has a resource cost, which shows the amount of Xenoshyft it takes to purchase that card. It also has an ability box, detailing its special rules or abilities. It has an item type box. This box lists various symbols which denote the type of the item, such as weapon or piece of armor. By themselves, these symbols have no effect, but other rules will interact with items based on the symbols appearing in this box. Equipment cards, those with the hammer and wrench cross, represent pieces of gear that can be placed on troops to enhance their fighting ability. A troop can only have one of each item type equipped at any time. Instant cards are not placed on the game board, but usually are kept in a player's hand, waiting for the opportune time to be played. Let's get back to our sample turn. Before we begin, notice that the wave board includes a turn order reference for all players. We'll follow this through so you can see what a turn looks like. The first phase is the draw phase. To begin the game, each player should draw 6 cards. In subsequent turns, players would draw up to 6 cards, so note that you don't have to spend every card in your hand every turn. After all players have drawn cards, reveal the top card of the weather stack. This tells us what the weather will be for this round. As with other deck builders, if you need to draw cards and there are none available in your deck, reshuffle your discard file, forming a new draw deck. After all players have drawn cards and revealed weather, each player should claim one Xenosanthem based on the wave they're in. Note each wave has 3 turns. Next is the purchase phase. Players total how many Xenosanthem they've drawn. This tells them how much purchasing power they'll have for this turn. I've drawn 4, so I can purchase 4 points worth of cards. These purchases can come from Wave 1 troops or any of the available items. I'll spend 2 points to purchase a ranger. Add any purchased cards to your hand. And I'll spend the other 2 discarding my Xenosanthem to purchase a piece of armor. The purchase phase happens simultaneously for all players. Once all players have completed their purchases, we'll move to the Nortec deployment phase. Note, you don't have to spend every card in your hand. However, if you do spend Xenosanthem and don't use it during the purchase phase, it is lost. The deployment phase is done simultaneously by all players, and this is where you'll place troops and equipment into the Nortec deployment lanes. You should note that this is the first troop who will encounter combat moving this way. You'll face the enemies in this space moving this way. So it's important to line your troops up for the coming assault. I'll place a militia in the first space, a ranger in the second, and a militia in the third. I'll also add some Atlas armor to my ranger, which is going to give him W hit points. This means he'll gain hit points equal to the wave. It also allows him to prevent that much damage from enemy abilities once per turn. Slide the card under, and remember you can't have more than a single item type. Note that your deployment dashboard is made up of 4 zones. No more than 1 troop can be placed in each zone. It is not necessary, however, to fill up all 4 zones on a given turn. As you can see, we've left this zone empty. Remember, this is a cooperative game, so I can also deploy my cards to a friendly player's deployment zones. In doing so, they become the owner of that card, and should it leave play or be destroyed, it will move into their discard pile. Once all players have finished deployment, we'll move to the enemy deployment phase. Take the encounter deck belonging to the current wave, 1, 2, or 3, and deploy a number of enemy cards face down into each player's enemy lane board, depending on the current round of that wave. Round 1 of the first wave, each player is dealt 3 enemy cards. We'll take the top 3 cards from the Wave 1 Brood and place them into the enemy lane. Once each player's enemy lane has been populated, combat begins. The combat phase is broken into 4 steps for ease of play. The first is reveal and react. Flip the first enemy card face up. If it has a reveal ability, it will be resolved at this time. The ambush mantis has a reveal ability which is activated by fog, which is our current weather type. It says, place this enemy at the end of the enemy lane. The ambush mantis text read, each time this enemy advances or attacks, deal 2 damage to the last troop in this lane. We'll take this enemy and place it in the last space as indicated. Note that players can react to the enemy at this time by using abilities or playing instants from their hands. There is no limit to the amount of abilities and items used at this time. An important note is that reveal abilities cannot be prevented unless a card specifically states that it does so. All enemy forces move forward 1 space. And remember, each time the ambush mantis advances or attacks, deal 2 damage to the last troop in this lane. We'll take 2 red damage markers and place them on the militia, which exceeds his health value of 1, so he's killed and discarded. We'll return to the reveal phase, revealing the first enemy in line as a toxic shambler. Reveal. Deal 1 damage to the first 2 troops in this lane. 2 damage will kill our militia and would normally kill our ranger. However, he has additional hit points equal to this wave, 1, and takes 2 damage. Both the troop and the shambler will now deal damage to one another based on their power. The shambler will deal 2 damage, killing the ranger, and the ranger will deal 3 damage, killing the shambler. Discard each. And now that there are no more troops in my lane, the overrun phase occurs. If there are ever enemies left in the lane when all troops have been killed, the lane is overrun. If there's a revealed enemy in the lane, all players have 1 last chance to react to it before it attacks the base. If it survives this reaction, it will deal damage to the base equal to its power, and then is discarded. Unrevealed enemies must go through a reveal and react phase. The scavenger leech has a reveal effect that's only applicable during a monsoon. Players have another opportunity to react to the reveal, and now both will deal their damage to the base. The base would take 4 damage, taking us from 60 to 56. Once all players have completed the combat phase, move to the wrap-up phase. At this time, players can discard any troops or item cards they wish from their lane. All these cards are placed in your discard pile. Do not remove damage from troops who may have survived the attack. Remove any enemies still in the enemy lane. Pass the first player marker, and you can also discard any cards from your hand. If any of these item stacks have been depleted, you'll see the universal no symbol on the supply card. Remove that supply card and draw a new supply card replacing that empty item space with a new item from the item deck. Starting with Wave 2, players would then have the opportunity to discard Xenoshyft as noted on the cards in order to make their deck more effective by trading 3 single Xenoshyft cards for a single 3 Xenoshyft card. Next, advance the wave tracker to the second space of the first wave, and a new round of play begins with the new first player. Players win by surviving all 3 waves, completing the 9th round. The players lose if at any time the base has 0 hit points. Hopefully this will give you an idea of how Xenoshyft Dreadmire plays. I hope you've enjoyed this first look. Check back for our impressions video on this title. as well as many other videos available from Roll to Hit Gaming. If you found this helpful, click like or subscribe to our channel for more content. For Roll to Hit Gaming, I'm Lucas. Have a great one.
Thank you for joining Roll to Hit Gaming for another First Look, where we go inside the box, through the rules, and onto the table. If you liked what you saw and want to see more, please click the like and subscribe buttons. Find us on Facebook and Twitter, and join us in the conversation in the comments below.